obviously I don't know on individual cases whether that's the truth or not, but there's no question that I think there's a very much higher percentage of footballers compared with ordinary people in society that do get, whether it's Alzheimer's or dementia or one or two of the other things that are associated with those kind of illnesses. So I think there's probably a case for it, and then especially in those days, obviously with that, the heavy-laced ball, you wouldn't want to head that too often.
Gary Lineker remembering Robbie Stiles, one of football's immortals. Now it's time to hear more about what's on Broadcasting House this Sunday with Paddy O'Connell. Paddy.
Hello. With shifting tiers and dire predictions for the winter, how on earth can we prepare for Christmas? We've a BH guide. Marcus Rashford is the man of the moment. We'll ask if footballers are finally wielding a latent power. Books have proved a salvation in 2020. Sales are booming. Richard Osmond and Sue McGregor bring us their recommendations for the long read. And we've a live military band and an update on our listener who soared to #1 in the music charts.
We shall look forward to that, Paddy. Now it's time for the weather forecast with Stanton House.
Thanks very much, Caroline. It's looking very stormy as we head on into this weekend. We've got a number of yellow warnings issued for the weekend for heavy rain and gales, mainly affecting more northern and western parts of the UK, but we're likely to see the risk of some minor flooding in places where we see the heaviest of the persistence of the rain, and also some disruption from the strength of the winds, which could touch severe gale force across the Irish Sea coast. But in the here and now, it's actually been a bit of a quiet end to the working week. We've got a lot of cloud across England and Wales and patches of drizzle, which will continue to affect the Midlands, southwest England, southern England, perhaps even in towards the southeast for a time over the next few hours. Further north across Scotland, Northern Ireland, clearer skies here. In fact, those temperatures are dropping across Scotland. It's going to be a chilly night here. But as we head through tonight, it does look like we'll see the first of the deep areas of low pressure spreading northwards, bringing outbreaks of rain, strengthening winds to a good portion of central western England and Wales, reaching southern Scotland, Northern Ireland by the end of the night. It will stay dry and chilly for the far north of Scotland. Further south, very mild indeed. Those temperatures by the end of the night for England and Wales around 13, 14 degrees and colder than further north. So into Saturday, it's a stormy day, widespread gales. We'll see heavy rain in the north and the west. That's spreading eastwards through the day. Could see some torrential squally bursts in that as it eventually clears the east coast of England. Behind it, it stays very windy with some sunshine, but also showers and longer spells of rain from the north and west of Scotland, and gusts widely around 40, 50 miles an hour up to 70 on Irish sea coasts. That's down. That's it from us at PM today. Our studio director, Darren Garrett, our editor, Good evening.
BBC News at 6 o'clock. This is Alan Smith. Good evening. Documents drawn up by senior scientific advisors reveal that COVID-19 is spreading significantly faster through England than even the government's predicted worst-case scenario. But the UK's current R rates, the average number an infected person passes the virus onto, suggests that restrictions are having an impact. France has hardened its stance against radical Islam after 2 fatal attacks in as many weeks. The leader of the Unite Union, Len McCluskey, has urged Labour members angry about the suspension of Jeremy Corbyn to stay in the party. Sir Keir Starmer has appealed for unity and an end to factional fighting. A powerful earthquake has struck Turkey and Greece. Buildings have been flattened and streets flooded after the tremor triggered a sea surge. Nobby Stiles, one of England's 1966 World Cup heroes, has died. New documents from the government's scientific advisors suggest that coronavirus is spreading significantly faster through England than the worst-case scenario previously predicted. The data from the SAGE group indicates that around 4 times as many people are catching the virus as was anticipated. Separate official figures estimate that about 570,000 people in England contracted the disease in the week to the 23rd of October. The UK's national statistician, Professor Sir Ian Diamond, has warned that the outlook is gloomy. The reproduction number, or R value, of transmission across the UK still remains above 1, which means that the number of infections will continue to rise. Here's our science correspondent, Palab Ghosh.
These figures are a stark illustration of the serious situation facing the country as winter approaches. Scientists on the government's scientific advisory group say there are around 4 times as many people catching COVID-19 than anticipated. A reasonable worst-case scenario used by officials and the NHS to plan had estimated 85,000 deaths from COVID-19 during the course of the winter. But an official SAGE document dated the 14th of October and made public this afternoon estimated that by mid-October there were between 43,000 and 74,000 people being infected with coronavirus every day in England. Their scientists say that this is significantly above that planned for by the reasonable worst-case scenario, with the number of daily infections in England was between 12,000 and 13,000 throughout October. It added that the number of people with COVID-19 needing hospital care is already higher than the winter plan. Deaths will almost certainly exceed the plan in the next 2 weeks. However, this is not the same as saying more than 85,000 people will die this winter, as government action can still change the course of the pandemic. The Office for National Statistics has published its own assessment of the current state of the pandemic. It's based on tests carried out on 640,000 people across the UK. It found that infection levels have continued to increase, with 1 in 100 people having coronavirus in England in the week to the 23rd of October. Professor Sir Ian Diamond is the UK's national statistician and responsible for the ONS.
At the moment, I've got to be fairly gloomy, and I do believe that we are continuing to increase. I think we need to be absolutely tireless in everybody across the country following the rules around safe distancing, hand washing, wearing masks, because if not, then I fear that the virus is going to exponentially increase.
SAGE's latest estimate are the number of people on average an infected person infects has decreased slightly. The average across the UK is between 1.1 and 1.3. And there's also been a levelling off of infections in the northeast. Although there's been some slowing down this week, the R remains above 1. The number of cases will continue to increase. The Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said that the government was striving to avoid new national restrictions. He said that ministers were confident they had the right measures and framework in place, which is not to have a blanket approach, but to target measures on areas where the infection is highest.
The latest official figures show another 274 people have died within 28 days of testing positive for COVID-19. It brings the total number of deaths in the UK to 46,229. A further 24,405 new infections have been recorded. The Welsh First Minister Mark Drakeford has announced the country will not return to a network of local restrictions when the lockdown ends in November. He said ministers were finalising a new, simpler set of national rules. Thomas Morgan reports.
A week into the 17-day firebreak lockdown in Wales, and coronavirus figures are continuing to increase. At a news conference in Cardiff, Mark Drakeford said that the rate of COVID-19 in the country had reached more than 220 cases per 100,000 people. From November the 9th, bars, restaurants and gyms will reopen, along with schools and most other businesses. After that, though, there'll be a more local approach. It'll be a national one with a simplified set of rules. The First Minister said he would outline that plan on Monday. It will include details on travel and on mixing between households. In order to ensure people follow protocols and in an effort to keep transmission rates down, Mark Drakeford has made it a criminal offence to break quarantine measures in Wales. It will now be a legal requirement to self-isolate. By law, businesses will have to ensure employees do not come into work if they've been told to stay at home, and giving false information to NHS contact tracers will result in a fine. In addition to these measures, those on low incomes will be able to receive £500 if they cannot work due to self-isolation. Care workers will also receive additional financial assistance in similar circumstances. Mr. Drakeford added, though, that those abusing the system will be penalised.
Making false declarations simply in order to get hold of money. And we will be looking over this weekend and find out the actual laws of expenditure in justice, and we want to apply across a range of offences.
The Welsh First Minister also said Boris Johnson had promised to hold talks about a common approach to restrictions across the four nations for the UK over Christmas. Mr. Johnson said he'd been told he would be invited to a
Glasgow, Edinburgh and Lanarkshire. The French government has warned that its citizens across the world are under threat following the knife attack at a church in Nice yesterday, which left 3 people dead. Prosecutors are treating the incident as an act of Islamist terrorism. Relatives of the Tunisian suspect, Brahim Aouissaoui, have told the BBC that he arrived in France on Wednesday, the eve of the attack. The 47-year-old man accused of supplying him with a phone has been arrested. From Paris, our correspondent Hugh Schofield reports.
With the suspected knife man recovering from gunshot wounds and under police guard, it's his family in Tunisia that's spoken today. An air account reveals that Brahim Aouissaoui had been on French soil for just a few hours when he entered the Basilica bent on killing. His brother Yassine said that having arrived in Italy last month, he crossed the border with France on Wednesday and went to Nice city centre. His family thought he was looking for work.
When we talked that night, he told me, I just arrived and it's getting very late. I don't know anyone in here. I will use a piece of cardboard and sleep on some stairs. He told me that in the morning he will try to find someone he knows to help him.
To have carried out his attack so quickly after setting foot in France suggests that Brahim Aouissaoui had a clear purpose in coming here. And the key question for investigators is whether his plan was formulated before he left Tunisia and whether others there were party to it. More details have emerged about Aouissaoui's victims. 55-year-old Vincent Locquez had worked at the Notre Dame Basilica for more than 10 years and was opening up the building when his throat was cut. Mother of the dead, Simone Barreto Silva, was a Brazilian national who lived in France for 30 years. She leaves behind 3 children. The spectre of the lone jihadist with a knife or other makeshift weapon is now one that haunts the country after this and the 2 other attacks of recent weeks. Extra police and soldiers will be on patrol on Sunday around churches where Catholics will be marking All Saints' Day, and on Monday when schools reopen after the half-term break with a minute's silence to honour the murdered teacher Samuel Paty. The government, the mood is resolute and the language is strong. The Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin said that France should realise it was at war.
Nous sommes en guerre face à un ennemi.
We are at war against an enemy who is both internal and external. His ideology, because we're not at war against a religion, we're at war against his ideology, Islamist ideology. They want to impose cultural code, its way of life, its way of stoking emotions through terror.
War talk may be what's needed to give heart to a stricken country, one that feels increasingly powerless in the face of jihadist murder. But war talk is also all too easy for the other side to cast as aggression and a pretext for more anti-French hate.
Throughout the day, tens of thousands of people have taken part in anti-French protests across South Asia, furious at Emmanuel Macron's pledge to uphold France's secular values. Our diplomatic correspondent James Landale has been monitoring developments.
The initial international response to the knife attack in Nice was pretty united. World leaders condemned violence and expressed solidarity with France. That included senior figures from Muslim-majority countries who sought to draw a distinction between their religion and extremist criminality. But today, many thousands of protesters took to the streets around the world to express a different view. In Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, tens of thousands joined protests accusing President Macron of Islamophobia. Some burnt his effigy, others demanded a boycott of French goods. In Pakistan, there were demonstrations in several cities, including Islamabad, where police used tear gas to prevent crowds reaching the French embassy. In the Palestinian territories, French flags were burned. A prominent martial arts fighter in Dagestan with 25 million Instagram followers posted a picture with a boot on President Macron's face. It was liked by 2.5 million people. A tweet from a former Prime Minister of Malaysia saying Muslims had a right to kill millions of French people was condemned by the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, as absurd and abhorrent. So Mr Macron's promise to defend freedom of speech, the right to publish cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad, and his vow to tackle violent Islamist extremism has now been seen by some as an attack on Islam itself. These are tensions that can have grave consequences.
Prominent figures on the left of the Labour Party have sought to quell anger about the decision to suspend Jeremy Corbyn.
Pobrecito.